Hello, today's story is The Tale of the Flopsy Bunnies by Beatrix Potter, Part 1. Now, it is said that the effect of eating too much lettuce is soporific. Soporific means drowsy. Now, I have never felt sleepy after eating lettuces, but then I am not a rabbit. The lettuces certainly had a very soporific effect on the Flopsy Bunnies. When Benjamin Bunny grew up, he married Flopsy. They had a large family and they were very improvident and very cheerful. I don't remember the separate names of their children, but they're generally called the Flopsy Bunnies. However, as there was not always quite enough to eat, Benjamin used to borrow cabbages from Flopsy's brother, Peter Rabbit. Peter Rabbit kept a nursery garden. But sometimes Peter Rabbit had no cabbages to spare because Peter Rabbit also had a family to feed. So when this happened, the Flopsy Bunnies went across the field to a rubbish heap, and this rubbish heap was in the ditch outside Mr. McGregor's garden. Mr. McGregor's rubbish heap was a mixture of interesting things. There were jam pots and paper bags and mountains of chopped grass from the mowing machine, which always seemed to taste oily. And there were some rotten vegetables like marrows and even an old boot or two. But one day, joy! There was a quantity of overgrown lettuces. Well, the Flopsy Bunnies were simply stuffed after eating those lettuces, one after another. And soon they were overcome with drowsiness and lay down in the grass. Benjamin was not as overcome as his children, and before going to sleep he was sufficiently wide awake to pop a paper bag over his head just to keep off the flies. The little Flopsy Bunnies slept delightfully in the warm sun, and from the lawn beyond the garden suddenly came the distant clackety sound of the mowing machine. The blue bottles began buzzing against the wall, and a little old mouse picked over the rubbish among the jam pots. That little old mouse was Thomasina Tittlemouse. She was a wood mouse with a very long tail. She rustled across the paper bag and she awakened Benjamin Bunny. Thomasina apologised profusely and said, "I know Peter Rabbit." Of course, Peter Rabbit is Benjamin's cousin. While she and Benjamin were talking, closer and closer, they heard a heavy tread above their heads. Suddenly, Mr. McGregor emptied out a sackful of lawn mowings right on top of the sleeping Flopsy Bunnies. Benjamin shrank down under his paper bag, and the mouse hid in a jam pot. The little rabbits weren't disturbed at all. They smiled sweetly in their sleep. Even though they had a shower of grass on them, they didn't wake because the lettuce had been so soporific. They were even dreaming that their mother, Flopsy, was tucking them up in a hay bed. Mr. McGregor looked down after emptying the sack. He saw some funny little brown tips of ears sticking up through the lawn mowings. He stared at them for a very long time. Presently, a fly settled on one of them and it moved. Curious, Mr. McGregor climbed down onto the rubbish heap and had a closer look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 little rabbits, he said. He took his sack and he dropped them all into it. The Flopsy bunnies were even dreaming that their mother was turning them over in a bed, and they stirred a little, but they didn't wake up. Mr. McGregor tied up the sack and he left it on the wall, and he went to put away the mowing machine. If you'd like to find out what happened to the Flopsy bunnies, click on to part 2, or you can read the rest of the story yourself at Project Gutenberg.